guys, we're going to do a bit of a different style video this time. It's going to be a little bit lengthy. We're going to do a bobber breakdown, and basically we're just going to run from the front of the bike all the way to the rear of the bike. I'm going to answer any questions that have been brought up through my Instagram, my Facebook, or on my YouTube channel itself. I'm going to do my best to answer anything because I have posted the bike in its finished state for sale. I posted it about 6-7 hours ago and I've already had almost 100 replies on it. I didn't think it was going to go that fast, but I've had everything from people seeing it on the channel to just wanting to see it in person, right down to people wanting to come with cash now. I've pushed everybody off for a day just so I could shoot this video with it, just in case it does sell tomorrow. But I wanted to answer some of these questions while I still had it, so I can literally break down each part individually and go over what I did or anything that I missed in some of my how-to videos. We do have the next bike sitting behind ready to go, so I'm only selling this one to keep the channel going, like pushing forward. Decided I'm just gonna keep going with the bikes. They were doing really well. I do my cars and my trucks for my personal use anyway, so I'm gonna skip with all that stuff and just keep building bikes. It's something that I love to do. So what I'll do is I'll start with the front section, work my way back, and you'll be able to scrub through the video and kind of see where I'm at or what I'm talking about in each segment of the video. So don't feel like you have to watch the whole thing. Skip through to anything you had a question about, and hopefully you enjoy the video. All right guys, we're gonna start with the model of the bike. It's a 2008 V-Star Classic 650. We swapped out the front rim real fast because it comes with a matching 16-inch front rim, and for the style of this bike I wanted something larger. So this is the custom model 19-inch. You can retain the stock rotor and caliper and axle. The only thing that you're going to need to swap out to have your stock speedo work is the speed sensor. The classic speed sensor is set for a 16-inch rim, and it'll throw your speedo off if you try to reuse it. So either get the speed sensor for the 19-inch front wheel, or you can do what I did. I deleted my speedo anyways, so I use GPS. I have a small mount for my handlebars that I got off Amazon for 30 bucks. It keeps my bike clean because I end up detaching it when I go out, for a ride or show, because I use it on pretty much all my bikes. So definitely worth the money for that. Next question I had about this bike, and the next big question actually, was the forks and what I did to get them this low and how they rode. I've only rode this bike twice now. I've never taken this much out of the forks on the V-Star, but riding a stock V-Star or even just moving it in and out of the garage, I noticed how light and weak the front end feels compared to the build on this one. The stock V-Star comes with 10 weight. I cut 3 inches out of this, and I used, I believe it was Bellray 20 weight. And when you extend the damping rod, or add the spacer in the damping rod, you can use plastic sleeve, you can use any scrap metal you have lying around. For the whole $4 this costs, I bought, this is 1 inch by 5 inch galvanized pipe, and it's threaded on both sides. I couldn't find it without threading, but I ended up cutting right at the threading, and it left me 5 inches in here to play with. So I cut my 3-inch spacer out, I put it in, and then I cut 2 inches off the spring. You'll read in a couple places where you should cut the equivalent off the spring that you're adding to the damping rod. Definitely don't do that. It'll be way too soft. So I could have even went less. I could have went 1.5 off the spring on a 3-inch spacer. So after doing that and putting the 20 weight in, I've hit a couple train tracks and potholes already on this thing, and it is stiffer than stock for sure, but it hasn't bottomed out on me yet. I'm 180, almost 185 pound rider, and it seems to work well for me. I wouldn't push it at over 200 pound for an over 200 pound rider, but at my weight and height, it works out really well. From there, we stole most of the rest of the front end from a V-Star 650 Custom, only because the triple trees are chromed whereas on the Classic they have covers. I think they're just caps from the factory that go over them. So these are hard chrome, and I retained these just because of the look we were going for. Also, the bracket for the headlight on the Custom and Classic are actually different. So I went with the 5 3/4 headlight off the Custom, which is smaller from the 7-inch that comes on the Classic. So to make it straightforward and simple, retain the stock Custom headlight bracket and headlight bucket. I just swapped out the triple trees. I retained the Classic front fork lowers and upper tubes. They're all the same anyways. You can go back in the video and watch where I shaved them. I got rid of all the mounting points for the front fender. From there, I used the custom clamps as well, just because they were already chrome. And I think that's pretty much it for the front end that I saw questions for. The biggest thing is making sure that you choose the correct speed sensor, whether you're going to go GPS speedo or you're going to retain a stock speed cable. Swapping to the 19, I also had this on when I had the front fender on, and depending on the tire you use, you will have clearance to run the stock Classic fender with the 19-inch rim to give you that more full look. I have a picture of how it looked before, and I'll post it up on this right now. I've read before where, you know, the same size tire in two different brands can cause effects. So I am running a Michelin Commander on this one. I've read the Dunlops are a little bit fatter on the same size. So this is a Michelin Commander. I know for sure this will fit with the stock Classic front fender if you're kind of looking for a more Cholo style or filling up the gap in that front fender. All right, right on to the next question. I'm running a single throttle cable, and it's very simple. I just deleted my return throttle cable. People have asked what the negative effects are on it. I haven't had any so far. This is the third bike I've built like this, and I can't see there being any problems down the road, other than if your main cable snaps, you could potentially use the second cable to replace it if you're stranded somewhere. But there's plenty of return snap. As long as you take care of your cable, keep it lubricated and clean, there's no issues with this at all. From there, the bars are 12-inch Apes. Not sure the brand, I got them at a swap meet. I've had them kicking around the garage for a long time. I've had them on two previous builds, and the owners wanted something a little bit shorter. I'm 5'10", my arms are straight out on 90% of the builds I do with this. It just depends on the drop seat and the frame of the style of bike I'm building. But most of them have been V-stars, so I kind of know where I'm at. I'm almost straight out with my reach. Anything above the shoulders is just uncomfortable on a long ride, just because of the vibration. You lose circulation. Makes sense, it's anatomy. So moving to the tank, I've had some questions about capacity. With dishing the tank, have I lost fuel capacity? You lose a little bit of space. I was getting just over 200 kilometers to a tank, and I know somebody else that rides a build that I did a few years ago, he was in the same boat. But after dishing the tank, I think I was averaging around 175 kilometers on the last build, 180, you know, depends on how rough you are on the bike, but on a good day, we're getting about 180 to a full tank with the dish. So not a whole lot. You're losing about, I'm gonna say, between 30 and 35 kilometers. That's just, you know, being generous on that. So 30 to 35 kilometers with dishing the tank is what you're gonna lose, which on these small displacement bikes really isn't that big of a deal. I can still make a jog all the way down to the lake and most of the way back if I didn't have to fill up. I think that's it for the front side and middle. There's a little things I've done. The kill switch and ignition have been moved to the side of the bike, so I'll show you guys that when we go over and do the foot clutch. Any other questions about this, just post them up in the comment section, and I should be able to answer anything even without having the bike here. So we'll move on to the next one. All right, so I've had a lot of questions on this rear fender. It's probably been the most asked about thing on this build. I did use the stock classic Fender. It's metal, so it's easier to work with. The custom model has a, I don't know, plastic fiberglass. It's more of a ducktail look. Very hard to, make look good just because it's plastic. I'm sure you can cut them down and they look, half decent, but you can't add things like the trim or, bend it out of shape or anything like that. It's molded to the shape that it's stuck in. So this is the stock Fender cut down. It took me about an hour of measuring, and I literally measured, I think I measured somewhere between 10 and 15 times, right from eyeball center. And then I measured through 10 different spots running down the Fender to where I was cutting. I made the cut in half first, and then from there, I actually put it back on the bike. I set everything back up with the Fender struts, and I marked a spot on the tire, and I kind of just traced with my finger using a guide on the bottom of the fender mount, and was able to make a pretty clean line. And I actually, from my center mark, cut this side out first, and then I was able to take that, transfer it to the other side to get the same arc. So the only spot where I had to remeasure was the finished cut for the middle, and then I went back and fine-tuned it. Make sure you have I'm not sure exactly what the real name, but like a fabric tape measure. So one of the ones that are malleable that you see tailors use, but definitely the best way to go for this. I've had a lot of people ask if I would make them fenders. So if anybody's watching this video and they don't feel up to cutting their fender or don't have the ability to weld this, especially if you're in Ontario, Canada, I will remake this. I have all the measurements here now, and I can probably duplicate this within a couple hours, as long as you're willing to paint the fender yourself or strip the paint for me. Makes marking and everything a lot easier. As far as the fender struts go, it was really straightforward. Cut 4 inches out of the center. When I re-welded it back together, there was a small step down gap, and what I ended up doing was cutting the inside edge and bending it down, and then I used, I think I had to fill a 2 millimeter gap almost all the way through. So I filled that with wire, and I used copper plating on the backside to help give me something to use the welding wire and weld against, because it doesn't stick to it. You can look that trick up on YouTube. That's where I found it. From there, I've had a lot of questions about the seat. I use a guy out of London, Ontario. He runs Chop Shop Industries, really good guy. He's hooked me up with tons of parts in the past, everything from handlebars to headlights to obviously seats. I only modified the seat slightly. There is actually 2 mounting points on the bottom side of the seat that you're supposed to bolt this to. I actually cut one off just because it allowed me for more movement. Otherwise you'd be hitting the tank. So I cut the very front one off and retained the back one. And I was able to make this mount out of 1/4 inch plate. So when I set the seat down into the springs, there's actually a hole in there that I will throw a cotter pin through, and it'll lock that seat right down. It did really well on its first ride, and even better on its second ride. I think it settled a little bit. The springs obviously were still tight, so they've settled now, and it's been a pretty comfortable seat for the short rides I've done. Don't think I'd do, a 500 kilometer, one-way trip on this kind of seat, but this is size small. You can get large size, which literally is larger, but comes with a little bit more cushion in it. So I think that answers everything on this side of the bike. We're gonna move over to the foot clutch, because again, I've had a lot of questions about that. All right, guys, I'm gonna hand bomb this part of the video just because I can't get the camera on the stand into the tight spots. You're gonna need to see some of these things. This is the foot clutch setup. I came up with a design after eliminating the cable. We'll start with the clevis on the rear. This is a clevis I just got at Canadian Tire. It had a large gap in there, so it gave me plenty of room to run this rod that I made with lots of threading, so it gave me more adjustment on the throw of the clutch. Then I just used a clevis pin, put a cotter pin in the bottom side of it. So this is changeable. If you wanted to go back to the stock cable setup, it's very easy. You take the brackets I made off, you put your stock bracket back on, you put the clevis that comes from factory back on. You just have to use probably a shorter pin, or cut this pin shorter, or have 2 pins on stock, right, if you wanted to switch back out. Super easy to do. Like I said, you can turn it back to stock. Made all the brackets in-house. Joints were bought from a local store. I have this set up for adjustment, but you could probably get rid of it. It just adjusts the throw of the clutch, but I ended up putting it on this side anyways. So in a future build, I would make this a solid bar with no adjustment. All my adjustment for the clutch will be on this side. All my adjustment for the foot would be on the bottom side. It's attached to the stock point where the joint would have went to the gear selector. I just drilled it out to fit a slightly bigger bolt, put it in there, and now I can take off the top side and either reel this out or reel it in to get height, or change the angle of the foot position. So I had it sitting really high up on the floorboard at the start. I pushed it down so this is still loose. Right here is where the clutch starts engaging. Right there is where it bottoms out. So you're parallel right with the floorboard. And then basically as soon as you get your toes up, the clutch starts engaging and you just ease it out. It's very, very light. I can push this thing with 1 finger with 0 issues. This is it's super light. It almost feels like a hydraulic clutch, getting rid of the cable. I can definitely make this kit for anybody that's interested. Like I said, I would probably build the center rod a little bit differently. I could get it cheaper because I wouldn't need joints in the center like that. Now that I have all the measurements as well, I can redo all the designs on the brackets. And the only thing that you would have to keep if you wanted to ever turn it back to stock on the fly is you'd have to keep a second gear selector in stock or on hand, because I welded this to the original one. You could probably make your own bracket, but for what it's worth, I think I paid $10 or $15 from the scrapyard for a second one, so I can turn it back to stock at any point in time. Now, it's not for everybody, this style of riding, but definitely fun. Now I can say I've done it. Would I do it again? Probably not. If this bike doesn't sell, I would keep this bike as it is. It is super fun to ride through traffic on this thing, banging gears this way. But I would also like to have a bike like this where I can take my wife out with me. So I would not run foot clutch with a passenger. I'm sure there's people out there that do it. It's just personal preference. Once you ride one, I think you'd understand. All right, guys, we're going to try to wrap this up. Thanks for joining the bobber breakdown. I tried to answer as many questions as I possibly could about anything we have done to this bike specifically. It is up for sale. Probably going to sell fairly quick, I think. I've had a lot of people message me about it, but I mean, even through COVID, we'll see who actually shows up with cash in hand, right? So next build, we'll start for the next video. We'll get going on that series, have a completely different design lined up for the build. We're not going to build 100 bikes that look the same. I'm going to stick with the V-Star for the next build and try to, after this bike goes, find something different. I've always wanted to do a VLX or a Shadow 750. So maybe hit up one of those for the next build, but we'll see. But thanks for tuning in and sticking around, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.